Today I will respond to a video and possibly a series of videos in the near future from a channel called Study of Antiquities and the Middle Ages. It is my personal belief that some of the contributors and experts interviewed on this channel do a terrible job and push politically modified incorrect history to benefit their agenda at the expenses of the truth. And, as of the writing of this video, I believe some of the guests use their academic titles to give an aura of authority to their obviously false and biased claims. Apart from these experts that occasionally appear as guests, the channel has a mixture of videos. Some I would consider to be complete nonsense. Others actually surprised me for how correct they were with the information, which indicates that the problem is probably not the channel itself, but some of the guests. In particular, there is one professor that I will focus our attention on today, Dr. Rebecca Futo Kennedy. Not only I strongly believe her attitude and teaching method to be highly unprofessional, littered with selective bias and clearly politically motivated, but I personally find her presentation style to be very off-putting. However, do remember that I attack the argument here, not the person, and before we do that, I want to strongly underline the word focus on her arguments. On the video in question, we also see the host of the channel, who is the one asking the questions to the expert. As a matter of decency and respect, please do not attack this man and do not spam their comment section under this video. Host and founder of the channel, Nick Barksdale, passed away on June 2nd, 2022 for complications due to endocarditis at age 30. He was a husband and a father. His friends and acquaintances describe him as, open quotes, a fantastic man, fun, generous and warm-hearted. I do not know if the family still reads the comments, but I ask that we stay civil and focus on the information and arguments, and to please leave a grieving family in peace. Contrary to my detractors, I attack the arguments, not the person, and I believe in decency and civil debate. Alright, let's go. The infamous coin.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the study of antiquity and the Middle Ages. As always, I am your host, Nick.
So as I was explaining, not an answer to him, and my sincerest condolences, it's an answer to her. Okay? Me versus her.
Back to the study of antiquity and the Middle Ages. As always, I am your host, Nick Barksdale, and today we are joined once again by Dr. Rebecca Futo Kennedy. This is my question. Was Hannibal, the man who made Rome tremble, black?
As with any other question about this, right? First, let's call the thing what it is. This obsession with trying to make sure that this great general Hannibal, the man who makes Rome tremble, is a white man, is of course the desire is strong, and we can go back to Dodge and sort of like the Caesar Alexander Hannibal, right? Because
desire by who? I would like to ask, Professor, because personally I do not care. If anything, I'm a pro Scipio Africanus man. So, but then again, I'm sure there are some people that would want to claim every person of importance. A fringe, mind you, but they want to claim every person of importance to be white. But obviously, if she started like this, she's also going to mention those people that are trying to claim him and many other important people as black, even though they weren't, right? Because she's going to be fair. I accepted that there are some people that do try to do that with white people. There is also the other side of the equation. If you're going to be fair, you're going to mention both. Right, Professor?
Because he classifies Hannibal as one of the sort of great generals, we have to claim him. But also, I think going back to this tension that I already talked about with the issue of sub-Saharan, and what we mean by that sort of classification is this desire also to, for people who lay claim to descents from in North Africa that are anti-black as part of the sort of history of the development of that Arab invasion and modern imperialism, there's a strong tendency to want to make sure we separate that. So yes, okay, Egyptians might have black skin, might be black Africans, and even if their skin tones are slightly different, we still call them black today.
Now you're utilizing the modern term for black, and you're retro-applying it to the ancient world in order to justify a very arbitrary classification, as I have expressed.
And so, is Hannibal black? Again, The question is really, can we make him white? Which is
No. That's mental manipulation, Professor. We're not gonna let that one go. The question is Hannibal Barca black? It's a neutral question. Now, depending on who is asking it, then we could be like, yeah, I could agree that specific individual may be asking it for the wrong reasons. One of which could be, can we make him white? If that's the inherent purpose of asking a historical question, then yes, the premise of the question is flawed, not the question. However, you should then be honest and fair and say the same for the people who ask the question because they really want to make him black, but you don't, which means you are biased, because at least I ask both and I reject both. That's true equality and academic neutrality. The fact that I need to explain that to a professor is beyond me.
What is Hannibal black? Again, the question is really, can we make him white? Which is the one thing he's not. He could be lots of things. The one thing he isn't is white, because that's not a category that they would have recognized. And it isn't actually one that fits. But if you look at his bust, right, we have this bust that I'll share with Nick, again, that comes from Capua. It was found in Italy, this bust of Hannibal, because remember, of course, the Carthaginians controlled Spain, parts of Spain, they controlled parts of Italy, they controlled Sardinia and Sicily. If you go to Sicily, the history of Sicily is a sort of highly mixed African, Greek, indigenous, and Italian cultures, even.
Since you push for precision in language, I will use the same method onto you, because one thing that people do, for example, Simon Elliot, is that they will say Septimius Severus is the greatest African emperor, and he keeps saying African because he knows that people will translate that as black. And the reason why I know that is because at one point he actually did slip and said he was the greatest black African emperor. He did say that. As people of this political persuasion will do that. So do extremists on the other side, but this is important because we're focusing on this right now. They will use language in a way that allows them to be not specific, vague, so that they push the message they want without having to say the stuff that would actually get debunked. I'm still gonna debunk you though, because I know exactly what you're doing. Look at this.
He could be lots of things. The one thing he isn't is white, because that's not a category that they would have recognized. And it isn't.
Because that's not a category they would have recognized, then they wouldn't recognize the modern category of black either. It's either, professor, linguistically speaking, because you're not a linguist, either you apply the ancient terminology and you stick to it, whether it's we are using black or white, or you apply the modern terminology and you stick to it. You can't say, oh yeah, the people would be black because that's how we would modernly recognize it, so you consider black as a term fit for description, even when it comes to how you retro-identify a people, aka the Egyptians. So in that case, you're okay with the fact that black is a category they wouldn't have recognized. But when it comes to white, no, it's not valid. That's the one thing he certainly isn't, because they wouldn't have recognized that term because it's a modern term. This shows a tremendous dishonesty when it comes to how language is systematically used to convey a preconceived message. Problem is, these are recorded and I can dissect them. I can pause you anytime I want and I can dissect your language, and I will. Because if there is one thing I cannot stand is intellectual dishonesty and propaganda, masked as academia. These two things, I'll fight them until the end of my days. Doesn't matter where they come from or for what political persuasion. I would like to also underline that the Romans did refer and did use the term white. Of course, it's different to how we use it today, also because people use it in different ways. And that's in fact one of the things that I will focus. What do you mean by white, Professor? I'll get to that in a second. I want to let her talk first. So put a pin on that. The actual definition of white we are working with. Clarity before explanation, clarity of language. We need to make sure we understand each other. She's not doing that, she's keeping it purposely vague. But once again, the Romans did use it. They classify the world with black, white, and blonde. Blonde being the Germanic, white being themselves, so Mediterraneans, Italians, Greeks, and then black being the Ethiopians.
Actually, one that fits. But if you look at his bust, right, we have this bust that I'll share with Nick, again, that comes from Capua. It was found in Italy, this bust of...
Probably not him.
Of Hannibal, because remember, of course, the Carthaginians controlled Spain, parts of Spain, they controlled parts of Italy, they controlled Sardinia and Sicily. If you go to Sicily, the history of Sicily is a sort of highly mixed African, Greek, indigenous, and Italian cultures, even today. I think they're still not sure how Italian they are down there.
You're wrong, we're Italian. I'm Sicilian, we are Italian. This is one thing that really pisses me off. Yes, let me say it, okay? Because this is, since she is so clearly on the politically correct side and we need to defend indigenous people, I'm an indigenous Sicilian, okay? I find that statement offensive, Professor, as a Sicilian. So, yes, Sicilians are proud of being Sicilian, which means if you ask a Sicilian, are you a Sicilian first or are you an Italian first? A lot of Sicilians will say Sicilian first. But we are both. A Sicilian is an Italian. So, the difference between Sicilian and Italian is that all Sicilians are Italian, but not all Italians are Sicilians. To help you understand that, Professor, we can do it this way. All Texans are Americans, but not all Americans are Texans. All Californians are Americans, but not all Americans are Californians. All Sicilians are Italians, but not all Italians are Sicilian. That's how it works. Yes, we are Italian. I can tell you that much. Also, Sicily has been part of Italy since the late Republic. Before the Empire, the ancient Romans in Latin were using the term Italia geographically to include the peninsula, the Alps during the late Republic, also the islands, Sardinia and Sicily. We've been Italians for 2,000 years. Thank you very much.
This bust that they found in Italy of Hannibal, if you look at the bust, if we're going to say, oh, look at the physical features, he's not white.
What do you mean by white, for crying out loud? So what is he, black? By these features, is this black?
But what does that mean? Because none of them are white. Is he Phoenician? Is he Berber? Whatever that means. Is he African? He's African. That we can say that with certainty. He is. Because
he was born in Africa, yeah. So is Elon Musk.
African. What that means beyond that is anybody's guess, but it actually, he's not European. So that was one thing we can actually say for sure. My whole point is, look, it doesn't matter.
Okay, of course it doesn't matter. Then she goes into the... So first she... Oh my gosh, these professors. Oh, I really hope I become the nemesis of this type of academia. Not all academia. I have a lot of strong connections and mutual respect with a lot of fellow academics. Just find them in the comments. Here is, though, this type of academia, it pisses me off. And sorry, I'm speaking negatively. I want to see her face, not the face of the presenter. So you can't say it doesn't matter after you have given an entire presentation as to why he was not white. So it matters only if you can state that he was not white. But if I say, I don't think he was black, then it doesn't matter. What a patronizing, annoying, oh my gosh, way of thinking. It's like methodless. This is academy-less.
We can actually say for sure. He's not European. So that was one thing we can actually say for sure. My whole point is, look, it doesn't matter if he's black. We will never know, but it doesn't matter because he could be. But I know what he isn't, and he isn't European, and he isn't German, and he's not Nordic. And
Who the heck? My gosh, the strawman. Who on Green Planet Earth, Professor Kennedy, talking about a strawman, who on Green Planet Earth says that the likes of Hannibal, leader of the Carthaginians, who says he was German? Who's this idiot who says he was Nordic? Point to me at someone who states, yes, Hannibal Barca was from Norway. And I will, with you, I guess, debunk them. I'm ready for that. I'm ready for that. When people ask, was he black? No one is asking if he was Nordic. He was a Viking. We are asking, was he black African? It's a perfectly valid question to ask. Yeah, there will be the occasional racist that will be so happy when I share the evidence and I say in this case, because it depends, sometimes I do debunk the other side. But in this case, sorry, the likelihood of him being black is extremely low, as I can provide more evidence right now with the coins. Yeah, there might be the occasional racist that is going to be happy for the wrong reasons, but the truth doesn't change just because it may be. If I like pizza, I'm not going to say, oh no, it's not pizza anymore if a racist likes pizza too. Who cares? The truth is the truth. That's what's important. You cannot modify the truth just to get one over to the side that you dislike, because then you're no better than them. You're twisting the facts.
I know what he isn't, and he isn't European, and he isn't German, and he's not Nordic, and he's not Aryan. He's not your people.
Oh, he's not your people. Yeah, I feel like I lost IQs. If you appreciate my content so far and wish to help ensure my ability to continue to tell it how it is, regardless of any possible backlash, please support this channel on Patreon. Any support helps me and my team of academics keep the channel strong and gives us the means to fight back against the political rewriting of history. Stand with us, form the wall, defend the truth. Now, I want to do something. In this video, Dr. Rebecca Kennedy, we got the full name. Splendid. Answers our question, she actually didn't, as to whether or not Hannibal Barca, the great Carthaginian general, made Rome tremble was black. I would suggest B capital, since I capitalize both B and W. We discuss arguments that rage online involving the Punic peoples, Phoenicians, Berbers, etc. And it comes to race and ethnicity in the ancient world. Very nice. We also discuss the confusion and complexity of identity in ancient North Africa, since a variety of peoples and cultures have mixed through years of population movements in antiquity. This is the part that I push. But when I say it, I get attacked and called racist because I'm not saying they were all black. Well, they agree with me. They were not all black. There was a massive, massive mixture of ethnicities in North Africa. Finally, when we leave off, come to the conclusion that 1, his skin color doesn't matter. 2, we will realistically never know. Maybe we will. In the end, he is a great military leader who will always be known in the history of Africa. I would say in the history of the world, history of the Mediterranean, history of Africa as well, sure. Get your C's, people, late Bronze Age merch now. Okay, now, notice this. Doesn't matter, does it? His color of skin doesn't matter. Ethnicity, race, it doesn't matter. That's what this doctor is saying, right? And then your boy, Metatron, looked her up. Rebecca Kennedy, she's got a Wikipedia page, will you look at that? Why I teach about race and ethnicity, talking about double standards, in the classical world. Hold on a minute, Professor. I thought you said it doesn't matter. Gender and sexuality in ancient Rome. Yeah, because she also teaches gender studies. So, problem of classics and racism. Yeah. So, race and ethnicity, once again, I thought it didn't matter. BBC collaborations, I think I know where this is going. I'm going to focus on having a look what sort of classes this professor is teaching, and we're going to make several videos, just like I made several videos on other professors, because when I lock on, I lock on. But for this video, I just want to end with this. I find it so funny that someone who says and bases this entire discussion on the patronizing statement, it doesn't matter, when asked about the ethnicity of a historical character, teaches the ethnicity and race of historical characters. Hence, it only doesn't matter when you can't prove the ethnicity you want to push for political reasons. But it does matter very much when you are very able to push ideas and ideologies that you want to be presented to the public in order to get one against the other side. That's not academia. That's not university. That's not what students are paying for. What students are paying for is academic neutrality. The idea of keeping your own personal beliefs and your own personal politics, and which you're, of course, free to have whatever you want, out of the teaching. Because clearly this person is letting her own hatred for the opposite side of the political spectrum, and I understand when it comes to the extremists, I understand that, but she's letting that poison her presentations. You were invited, Professor, to answer professionally a question that people ask. What I saw in your answer was extremely disappointing. And I can already imagine, and not trying to build a straw man, but do allow me this. I can already imagine a class with this professor, and a black student raises the hand and asks, "Excuse me, Professor, but was Hannibal black?" And she would go into this whole massive route. She would like, okay, so black people had a lot of important positions of power and this and that, and discussing all the moving, but some of which is even true, because I do agree. I don't use the term sub-Saharan because I don't think it's correctly descriptive. But she would go into this massive diversion just to answer and validate the question of the black student. But if a white student asks the question, excuse me, Professor, but was Hannibal Barca black? Her answer would be, it doesn't matter. Why do you ask? He's not your people. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So if you see this, Dr. Kennedy, I challenge you publicly. Prove it. Be professional when you present information about the ancient world, and be accurate in language usage, particularly when you talk about my people, meaning the Sicilians, and in general, classical antiquity and the classical period.
Obviously, we have the myth of Dido and the founding of Carthage from Phoenicia.
Yeah.
We also have Phoenix, the sort of the initiator of the Phoenicians in North Africa, or even in Ethiopia, right? If we read Heliodorus's novel from the 3rd or 4th century CE, we don't know the exact date. He's got they tell the myth of Andromeda in that. And Andromeda, and of course we have 5th century vases of this. This is Phoenix, who's the father of Andromeda, who they're white, or they're represented as Phoenician, as not black, but they're in a space that is filled with black people. So, but the crux of the story of Heliodorus is that the king and queen of Ethiopia are black, and they have a daughter though who comes out to have really white skin. I mean, she's called white because she's a woman, but she has really pale skin, and so the mother has to hide the birth of this child because she's afraid that
I haven't got a clue what this has to do with Hannibal, but
people will think that she had the child out of wedlock. But in fact, what happened is, and here you're going to get a little bit of insight into ancient medical theories. There is a medical theory called imprinting, where if in the act of sex you are staring at something, that image can imprint onto the fetus. It's something about how they understood how the eye worked, the nature of how the eye worked. And so in the story, this black Ethiopian king and queen of Ethiopia are procreating, and she stares at a painting on the wall of Andromeda. And so the pale skin of Andromeda imprints on the child. And the whole thing ends up happy. Everybody's fine. Look, mom and dad, it's really me. But in the meantime, she's kidnapped by pirates and raised by shepherds. And there's true love. It's sort of like the Princess Bride of the ancient world. It's a really great story. But what it tells us, though, is how very common this sort of idea of these mixed identities are in North Africa, that we have these stories that have...
I still do not know why she went through this. I am one of those who pushes the idea that Egypt was multi-ethnic and multicultural, that not monolithic when it comes to the ethnicity you would have there, and how would it be? The same for the rest of North Africa, really, because of its geographical location, because of its geolocation. The entire coast of North Africa is a conduit and a connection between the Mediterranean world, in the sense of Mediterranean Europe, and Africa, and Asia. It connects all three. So yeah, you'll see Semitic people, you'll see black people, you'll see Europeans, you'll see all sorts of people. I kind of doubt that's what she's going to go into, though, because with all of this preamble, what I would say is, yeah, probably Carthage was multi-ethnic, although Levantine in origin, which means Hannibal was most likely Semitic. Is that where she's going?
People who are black and people who are not black interacting all the time. And there's a reality that they could, in fact, be related, and it's not a big deal. This is the world that Hannibal exists in, right? This is the world of the Nubians and the Kushites, of the Ethiopians and the kingdom of Aksum, of West African Ethiopians who are obviously black, of the Garamantes, who we don't know what they look like, of the people known as the Berbers, who also, again, this is not an actual ethnic category. It becomes one later because it can connect to sort of linguistic categories, but it's actually up in the air what to be called a Berber actually means. And we
case by case
have this sort of stew pot of Phoenicians who have settled in these places, but they've integrated and mixed with people who are already there. And as we can go back to our Herodotus, right, black Africans are indigenous to North Africa. So we're going to have these mixed populations.
She's correct in the section where she talks about the fact that, yes, black populations did exist in North Africa in prehistorical time, in the ancient period, although already when we reach the ancient period in classical antiquity, by then it would have been extremely multicultural, and in fact quite a lot of black original people would have been pushed south. Because also to remember that the Sahara is not a barrier. Depending on what period we are looking, the Sahara would have not been a desert, so very much depends on what period you ask. But in the classical period, when the Greeks were settling in North Africa, when the Romans then conquered North Africa, by that time, particularly the populations of the Delta would have been majority non-black. And in fact, the majority of what we now identify as a black African man, so to someone who is from Western Africa, Central Africa, the Horn of Africa, the Kushites, the Ethiopian of an ancient classification, meaning a black man. Yeah, there would have been some in Egypt, absolutely, but they would have not constituted the totality of the population. And the higher percentages of black individuals, people that we today would call black, to use your language, Professor, would have lived in Upper Egypt, meaning the southern part. We know that because when the ancients talk about them, they tell us when within a North African army there is a contingent of people who are black, they underline it, which means the rest, as if they were all black, they wouldn't tell us, oh, this contingent is black. We have that. I can prove that with the sources. Also, we have mentions of cities where they tell us that the inhabitants of this village in North Africa or this town were black. Once again, if you underline that, it means that the rest weren't. And there are a lot of pointers, not to mention the paintings, the representations that clearly distinguish the average skin tone of an Egyptian, which would be olive, as opposed to the average skin tone of a Kushite, which would have been black. But then again, there were some black Egyptians too. They absolutely were part of the population. With that being said, as I say, no hatred towards this channel whatsoever, but I will be reviewing a few of their videos, as I was explaining, just from the point of academic neutrality and the true facts based on documented evidence alone. No politics, no propaganda. We are tired of that stuff, and we are ready to present the truth and extinguish all politically driven nonsense. Thank you so much for watching, number ones, and I'll see you next time. And remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.